Hey guys, Craig Setzer with you. We're tracking Nicole. A little bit of a late start here. Some gremlins in the computers, but you know that happens from time to time. Anyway, regardless, we're going to get to it. It's the 10 a.m. advisory for Wednesday, November 9th. And of course, if you like the videos, click the like button or the subscribe button to join the channel and the notifications button so you can stay up to date when we do these videos. Let's get right to it. The 10 a.m. advisory is in. No changes since we talked last night. The storm's still a tropical storm, just shy of hurricane intensity. And really, this whole intensification process that I went through yesterday afternoon has stalled out. It has not continued, and I'll show you why in just a second. But let's go through the stats first because that's our starting point, and then we'll talk about the cone, the forecast track, do a timing graphic, and then we'll kind of go into the detail. Usually we do the analysis first, but we've got the advisory here, so let's start with that. So this was our number. Remember we were watching this 26.5. That 26.5, if that number gets lower, that's going to bring the stronger winds into Broward. Not necessarily Miami-Dade, but Broward. So this number here, 26.5, we're going to be watching that throughout the day. If it gets down to around 26.2 or 3, then northern Broward is going to see stronger winds, as well as almost all of Palm Beach County. The expectation is this number is about as low as it's going to go. Remember, the latitude number is the number of going north or south. The longitude number over there, that's going west or east. So that's the way those numbers work. But so we're watching this number closely here, and that's the thing that we're going to be watching as we go through the day. Winds at 70 miles an hour, and the pressure is 986. Now the pressure has not changed a lot. 986. Now the pressure has not changed a lot. The pressure's been kind of hovering in this 986, 985, 984 area, 987, and the hurricane hunters are investigating. So this is an accurate number here. We know that number as a good number there. Not just like a satellite estimated number. Moving west at 12, this speed's going to continue, if not increase just a little bit. All right, so let's go forward here. Of course, this yellow area, that's the tropical storm conditions. There's the 7 p.m. this evening position, and there's the 7 a.m. tomorrow morning position. So basically, the storm comes ashore overnight tonight. It's going to be a nighttime hurricane event for a small part there of east central Florida. You can see that red area, that's where the hurricane conditions are, and it's not a very big area of hurricane conditions because it's forecast to be just barely a hurricane when it reaches the coast, and then it'll start weakening to a strong tropical storm right away once it makes landfall there. You can see the yellow area here, that's the tropical storm conditions, almost into South Miami-Dade. We could see some tropical storm gusts in Miami-Dade, gusts over 40. Broward, I think gusts of 40 to 50. And then maybe a little bit stronger, and then Palm Beach County gusts of 50 to 60, and then as we go on north, 70 to 80 mile an hour gusts on up the coast, and that's going to extend pretty far to the north because the storm is just so lopsided there. So that is our period there, and then of course we have to always say this because there's the cone, and does it matter if we're in or out of the cone? Nope. At 4 and 5 days out, the cone is a great tool for letting us know where a storm might be going, but within 3 days, the cone in many ways just doesn't help us at all. In fact, it can actually hurt the messaging because people who are up here on the Space Coast, they might say, well, we're out of the cone, so things are looking better. But things aren't looking better. It's just the cone gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you get to the starting point there. So as the storm moves along and you're at some point here, you might end up out of the cone, even though you might end up in worse weather. So that's of course, every time I have to preach about the cone. There's the 7 p.m. tomorrow evening position, and then after that, it's to the north. And now the thinking is because so much of the circulation is going to be over land, and there's going to be that jet stream dip coming along, which I'll show you in a second, it becomes a non-tropical system, just a low-pressure system going up to the northeast. Let's talk about the watches and warnings. So we have the hurricane warning still in effect for Palm Beach County, as well as Martin, St. Lucie, Indian River, on up through Volusia, and I think Flagler's in there too. So basically it's the Space Coast and the Treasure Coast. We have the hurricane watch for inland Palm Beach County and for Broward. So remember, warning means conditions are expected. A watch means they're possible. We have the tropical storm warning for Broward, tropical storm warning for Lake Okeechobee all the way over to the west coast there, including Naples, Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, Fort Myers, Tampa, as well as up through Cedar Key and the Big Bend. They're almost to Panama City. Actually, Panama City, yes, not to Pensacola there. So tropical storm warning for these areas, as well as north of the hurricane warning up through Jacksonville and all the way up past Charleston on the South Carolina coast there, including the Georgia coast. In terms of the watches, still Miami-Dade is just under a tropical storm watch. So, which means the possibility of tropical storm conditions, but not the likelihood of tropical storm conditions. And then the storm surge warnings and watches haven't changed too much, except that a storm surge warning is now in effect over here on the west coast of Florida, where storm surge could occur, because what's going to happen is as Nicole crosses and goes to the north, there's going to be some pretty strong southerly winds pushing water there. As well, the storm surge warning continues from Palm Beach County all the way up into southeast Georgia. Storm surge watch for Broward County. I think we're going to see a high tide tonight when the storm is coming ashore as well. We're going to see some storm surge flooding, not like we saw in Fort Myers Beach with Ian, but enough that evacuations, if you live in an evacuation zone in a storm surge area and the evacuation order has been given, you need to get out of the area, get out of the evacuation zone. You don't have to flee the state, just get out of the evacuation zone. All right, let's talk about a little bit of the bigger picture here. First off, you know what, let me go over what the hurricane hunters have been finding this morning, because it's kind of interesting. So they've been finding really that the strongest winds have been on the north side, which is not surprising there. Not much wind from the earlier NOAA flight on the south side. All that strong wind is up there on the north side. And the pressure is kind of pretty much unchanged there, 986, 986, 987, right around that area. Air Force is in there right now, and they are finding that there's a small area of strong winds on the south side, and that is a local statement from the National Weather Service. But the strongest winds by far are on the north side, and they extend pretty far out as well. So as the storm continues to get closer, a large swath of the Florida coast is going to see building winds north of Broward as we go through the afternoon. In terms of the steering currents and where it's going and why it's going the way it's going, they look like this afternoon, or this morning into this afternoon. We have this blocking high that has been helping to steer. It kind of basically turned, because the flow around the high is like that. It turned Nicole back to the southwest there. But as we go forward into time, that high starts moving east. So as the high moves east, of course, the flow around the high is like that. Then we get more of that westerly motion there, and that is 7 p.m. this evening. That's why the thinking is that it's not going to make much more southward progress. It's probably going to be more west, because this high is marching to the east, and as that high marches to the east, that's going to want to turn the steering currents and get us out of that situation where it's moving to the southwest. Here we go on into tomorrow evening. The jet stream dip is coming along. It's pushed out the blocking high. Now it's now blocking high to the east. And so Nicole is turning to the north, and then eventually kind of gets scooped on up there and carried up to the northeast and becomes a non-tropical low-pressure system. This is reflected in the models this morning. The models are very similar with that west-northwest motion in all of the models. None of the models are jogging to the south here. We might see a few wobbles. Wobbles can't be discounted there, but we're not going to see a sudden shift or a turn or a direction or a heading that goes like that. That's not going to happen. It's either going to be west with a few wobbles, or more likely west-northwest, and maybe a few wobbles as well. That's through this evening. There's through tomorrow morning. There's through tomorrow evening, and then they're on up into to the Panhandle and Georgia goes Nicole. So here's the satellite loop, and you can see there on the satellite loop that it has been, there's not been a lot happening in terms of the thunderstorms being persistent near the center. And so what we need for a storm to strengthen is persistent thunderstorms, either almost over or over where the low-level center is. And you can see we're getting what we call bursting here, where thunderstorms are kind of just popping up a little bit here or there. This is not an indication of intensification. This is an indication that the storm is struggling. What's the storm struggling with? Dry air. We talked about this last night. This kind of color here, this brownish color, tan color, that's dry air. In fact, it's even ramping in under those high cirrus clouds there into the circulation. So it's really disrupted Nicole there from developing. There's also some wind shear going on. We've got a little bit of wind shear that has been impacting the system at some of the higher levels of the storm. So that also has been a limiting factor. There, by the way, is that little jog last night. It was like right there, came down and then resumed now this westerly motion there. In terms of the rainfall and what's going on right now, first off, a quick look at out there where the center is. And so what we're able to do now is not only track where the positions have been, but where it's going here. And so this little red line that's coming out, that's the new Hurricane Center forecast track. And now starting to show up in the range of the radars, you can start to see these real fast moving motions there. That's the center, not an eye, but the center showing up. We might see an eye pop up here on the radar, or what we call an eye-like appearance. Eyes are typically reserved for what the satellite sees. And then there we go. There's all the rain coming in. Bands of rain coming in, and they're just going to gradually increase as we go through the afternoon, as well as the wind gusts are going to come up too. Here are some of the wind gusts. The offshore wind gusts and the buoys have been pretty strong there, gusting over 51 miles an hour. Some of the coastal locations have been gusting in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range as well. And in the Keys right now, gusting to 30 miles an hour in some locations. But once again, as we go through the afternoon here and through the evening, the winds are basically going to build. The gusts are going to be stronger in the rain squalls that come through, and that's kind of going to be the way it plays out here. South of where the center comes ashore, the strongest winds are going to be north, or the weaker winds are going to be north of where the center comes ashore. That's where the strongest winds are going to be, and this is going to be a very lopsided storm as it's going through. So that's basically the latest. I will be back at 3:30 today. We'll do another update. I'll do it live, and then probably post it on YouTube as well, since that seems to, for some reason, get a lot more hits. Anyway, that's the latest. If you liked the video, please click the like, subscribe, or notification button. And until then, I will see you guys this afternoon at 3:30.